This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Harry and Meghan, once again, back in the media. Kelsa Breeze. I tell you, they are truly the gift that keeps on giving. Coming fresh off the heels of Harry and Meghan's fake royal tour in Jordan is another distraction to take away from the disaster that we all witnessed this week. According to their propaganda outlet, People magazine, Harry and Meghan made a surprise appearance at the NAACP Image Awards Creative Honors to give out their annual NAACP-Archewell Public Charity Digital Civil Rights Award. And I'd like to stress that NAACP stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And if you don't know, it's an American civil rights organization that was formed in 1909 as an interracial endeavor to advance justice for African Americans, otherwise known as Black people in the United States. So according to People magazine, they write, the NAACP-Archewell Digital Civil Rights Award recognizes individuals leading the way in advancing digital civil rights and technology equity. And the 2026 honor went to Dr. Marianne Franks for her work with the Cyber Civil Rights Initiative. It continues on to say in the second paragraph that you see here, the NAACP Image Awards Creative Honors is a precursor to the 57th NAACP Image Awards set to take place Saturday, February 28th in Los Angeles, celebrating achievements by people of color across more than 80 creative categories in film, television, music, literature, and podcasts. Okay. So now I want you to pay close attention to what's being said here. Prince Harry and Meghan have long-standing ties to the NAACP and were honored with the President's Award in recognition of special achievement and distinguished public service at the NAACP Image Awards in 2022. The couple was honored 2 years after the launch of their Archewell public charity, which supported efforts to tackle the COVID pandemic, back the Black Lives Matter movement, and fought for racial justice. Now, I don't know what organization they're talking about, but that's not what Harry and Meghan were doing. We all know that during that time, Harry and Meghan were behind the scenes censoring people and working with the censorship industrial complex. Now, keep in mind, the only reason why Meghan got her foot in the door here was because allegedly she's half Black. But I digress. Finishing up this People magazine propaganda piece, it says here in 2024, the California-based couple personally informed Dr. Joy Buolamwini that she was the winner of the NAACP-Archewell Digital Civil Rights Award winner that year, honoring her advocacy and research to overcome racist and sexist biases in artificial intelligence. Now, it's really strange to me, and I don't know if anybody picked up on this, but in all the puff pieces announcing this winner, they all pretty much say the same thing. There's really no background on who this woman is, as well as any photo showing us the beautiful winner. Now, why do you think that is? I mean, it is Black History Month, and one would think Meghan would want to uplift women of color, right? Especially since they're doing laundry together for $100,000, one would expect to see a photo of who this woman is. Well, I'm guessing the reason why they're not putting any photo up is because this woman is white. That's not the worst part about this, okay? Sure, we know that Meghan is a hypocrite and she doesn't uplift Black women. And of course, she's going to give $100,000 to a woman who's white because this woman serves a purpose for Harry and Meghan that has nothing to do with uplifting and helping people of color. Now, I suspect all of those grants that Harry and Meghan give out to do their laundry act as some form of payment for services that the people that they choose to receive this award are doing for them. Now, remember, Safiya Noble was the first winner of this Archewell Digital Justice Award. Now, keep in mind, Safiya Noble was a part of the Aspen Institute. She was a part of Defund the Police and the whole censorship complex. She also was the author of the stupid book, Algorithms of Oppression. And on top of it, Harry and Meghan asked her to be a part of their Netflix bullshit mockumentary, which was utter trash, supporting the narratives, actually the false narratives of Christopher Boosie, spreading myths and disinformation everywhere. Her center and this award combined was about $250,000. So I'm thinking that that was her payment for doing all of this dirty work. So looking at who this woman is, Dr. Marianne Franks, well, you probably don't recognize her, but I do. I know who this woman is, and that's because Dr. Marianne Franks starred in one of my all-time favorite congressional hearings on the censorship industrial complex. Since Meghan and Harry made a choice not to include this woman's bio in any of these write-ups, I figure you should hear what she's about.
I'm a constitutional law scholar who has studied and researched on the First Amendment for nearly 2 decades. I also study the intersection between technology and civil rights, and I've advocated for legal and policy reform to deter online abuse, such as image-based sexual exploitation. And in this work, I've always endeavored to honor the principles of free speech, due process, and equality, and greatly respect and appreciate the members of Congress, including some of the members of this committee that I've had the opportunity to work with, who've been committed to the same. It's work that often deals with aspects of the First Amendment that are ambiguous or contested, but my testimony today focuses on the aspects that are absolutely clear and foundational. The first is the core principle of the First Amendment, so eloquently expressed by Supreme Court Justice Robert H. Jackson in 1943. If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein. And to repeat, no official can dictate what Americans can say, think, or believe. The First Amendment constrains the government from interfering with freedom of speech. That includes the president, members of Congress, state officials, U.S. attorneys, special government employees. The First Amendment does not constrain non-governmental actors from making their own choices about what to say, what to hear, what to promote. Indeed, it does the opposite. It protects what Justice Kavanaugh has called the robust sphere of individual liberty, the right of private actors, including private universities, NGOs, businesses, to ignore, to criticize, refuse to associate with speech they don't agree with or think is wrong. The government also has its own rights of free speech, including the right to prefer certain viewpoints. It's allowed to communicate those preferences through persuasion, encouragement, and even funding. The government can encourage military enlistment without promoting criticism of the military. It can fund organizations that promote childbirth without also funding organizations that promote abortion. What the government cannot do is compel private actors to think or to speak a certain way using coercion or threats. When government actors speak on their own behalf, that is not censorship. When government actors promote their own viewpoints, including through persuasion and funding, this is not censorship. When non-government actors ignore, remove, criticize speech, or encourage others to do the same, not censorship. But when the government purges books, words, concepts that it doesn't like, that is censorship. When the government threatens people with the loss of employment, lawsuits, violence, jail, or deportation for their speech, that is censorship. When it seeks to force universities, law firms, or businesses to adopt the government's viewpoint, or when it seeks to punish judges, lawmakers, journalists, religious leaders, teachers, or students for dissent or for criticism of the government, that is censorship. The myth of the censorship industrial complex, a conspiracy that is so ludicrous that even the current conservative-dominated Supreme Court has dismissed it out of hand last year, has been used to vilify and harass experts, students, researchers, and nonprofits working on online misinformation with the express goal of discrediting, defunding, and dismantling that work. And the disabling of safeguards against foreign and domestic misinformation and media manipulation is a threat to free speech and to national security. And while there's no evidence to support collusion between the Biden administration and big tech, the relationship between the Trump administration and big tech is alarmingly intimate. Trump himself owns an influential social media platform and has literally surrounded himself with big tech oligarchs. The owners of Meta, Google, and of course X owned by Elon Musk, who spent $250 million to elect Trump, turned X into a pro-Trump propaganda channel, and was rewarded by being named Trump's special government employee, where he now enjoys seemingly unlimited powers over the federal government and over the American people. This administration has, within the span of a few weeks, unleashed the greatest assault on the First Amendment since the Red Scare, while insisting that they are restoring freedom of speech. The censorship industrial complex is a thought-terminating, gaslighting cliché that attempts to portray the most powerful people in the United States as oppressed and silenced. The current President of the United States is ordering lawful residents to be surveilled, kidnapped, and expelled from the country because of their speech. He is attempting to dictate what words people are allowed to use, what educational institutions are allowed to teach, what values businesses are allowed to promote. He is calling for critics and dissenters to be imprisoned and assaulted. He is threatening journalists, students, judges, lawyers, religious leaders, governors, anyone he deems insufficiently loyal and insufficiently obedient. Trump's message could not be clearer. You either say what he wants you to say or you will be punished. This is an attitude of a king and not a president, a man who has declared himself above the law, including the First Amendment. Senators take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to defend the Constitution even if, and especially if, the threat to them is coming from inside the White House. And for the sake of the American people and of democracy, I hope, Senators, that you will have the courage to uphold your oath. Thank you.
Isn't that something? Now, I believe, and this is my opinion, that the reason why they awarded this woman with $100,000 is not for her civil rights advocacy, but instead, it's because she's a lawyer. And these two know that they're in deep shit because they were behind the scenes participating in this censorship complex. The Democrats thought it was a brilliant idea to bring this entitled, arrogant woman to this hearing where she gets completely eviscerated.
Professor Franks, let me ask you, I listened to your and Ms. Hemingway's testimony and Professor Turley's, so I got part of it. As I understand it, your position, Professor Franks, is that I think you used the word myth. It is a myth that the Biden administration used government to compel speech, private speech, but that the Trump administration is doing that. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do you think perhaps you're allowing your personal political beliefs to affect your objectivity here?
No, I do not. What is guiding my answers here is that I'm looking to see what the Supreme Court has said. You notice that in the testimony about the censorship industrial complex.
I got that part.
No, I just
got
want
that
to
part.
clarify.
No, but I've only got 5 minutes. Your answer is no, as I appreciate it. Let me ask you a couple questions. You wrote a law review article in December of 2023 for the New York University Law Review, and it was about the two cases, Bruin, Supreme Court case, and Dobbs. Remember that article?
Yes, I do.
Okay. In this article, you said, I'm going to quote your words, "Taken together, these two cases demonstrate that the Supreme Court has embraced the use of the Constitution as a tool of racial patriarchy," end quote. Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay. And then you went on to say, quote, "When the Supreme Court declares that there is a constitutional right to armed self-defense in public, it openly embraces and promotes a culture that privileges white men's ability to terrorize and kill those that they perceive as threats," close quote. Did I read that correctly?
I believe so. Thank you for reading.
Okay. And did you also say in that article, I'm going to quote again, quote, "by simultaneously expanding white men's right to kill and constricting women's right not to die, this Supreme Court," referring to the current United States Supreme Court, "has turned the Constitution into a homicide pact as well," close quote. Did you write that?
That sounds like me.
Okay. In November of 2024, you tweet, don't you?
I'm not sure what the current terminology is for it, but yes, I am sometimes on the social platform that was formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, you're on a lot, aren't you?
I'm not sure what the relevance of that is.
You're trying to be provocative on there, don't you?
Again, I'm not sure what the relevance
Well,
of this question
let me
is.
show you the relevance. On November 7th, 2024, from your tweet, here's one of your tweets at 2:41 p.m., quote, "The majority of Americans hate women. The majority of Americans hate women more than they love anything, including democracy," close quote. Did I read that correctly?
I am not sure what this has to do with the subject matter of this
Did you
hearing.
say it?
I do not have those words in front of me. I probably said something along those lines, but
Yeah,
what is
you
the
said it.
relevance of
Here
that
it
to
is,
this
big as
hearing?
Dallas, right there.
Yes.
But your political beliefs don't impact your feelings about President Biden or President Trump.
I don't have feelings about either of them. What I have
Sounds
is
to me
doctrine.
like your favorite feeling is anger. Let me ask you this. You issued another tweet. This was in May of 2022. You've just been tweeting up a storm. You said, quote, "There's a reason why the conservative-dominated Supreme Court thinks the Constitution does not contain a right to an abortion, but is convinced that it contains an individual right to possess firearms. And that reason is white male supremacy," close quote. Did I read that correctly?
Is there a question in this?
Did I read that correctly? That's
Is there
my
a question
question.
that is relevant to this hearing?
Did I
And
read that correctly? Do you really think that the United States Supreme Court, you're an officer of the court, is guided by white male supremacy?
I believe that the First Amendment prohibits the president
Did you
and other
say
state
that?
officials for punishing people for
Did
their
you honestly say that, Professor?
I
And you
believe
expect us,
that the First
as a
Amendment,
Democratic witness, to take you seriously? Are you kidding me?
I believe that you should take
You
the First
heard of
Amendment
curb your
seriously, sir.
enthusiasm? Here's my saying, curb my nausea.
I
Thank you.
believe that you should
The
take
time
the First
has
Amendment
expired. Thank
seriously.
you. Senator Durbin.
Birds of a feather. This is who Harry and Meghan gave $100,000 to. Let me show you another clip because this hearing literally fed my soul. And seeing these arrogant, entitled assholes get dealt with, to me, is incredibly satisfying.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each of you for taking your time to be here today. Dr. Franks, we're here to talk about free speech, correct?
Yes.
And we're here to talk about that being a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the Supreme Court plays an essential role in guaranteeing those constitutional rights, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you about a tweet that you had in January 2024. The Supreme Court is a death panel. Is that your opinion?
In the context of this hearing, I think it is important to emphasize why I am here, which is to talk about my views on the First Amendment and my understanding of the
That's
doctrine.
not what I ask you. Do you think the Supreme Court is a death panel?
In the
for
context
free
of the cases
speech?
that, not for free speech, no, that was not the context of that particular
Oh, my goodness.
communication.
Okay. Well, it appears that you see the Supreme Court as a death panel, and that is some of the same rhetoric that unfortunately we continue to hear from some on the left who are trying to villainize justices who are doing their job. And I would like to just ask you, knowing that you have put this out, that the Supreme Court is a death panel, then let me ask you this. Do you look at Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, Jackson as members of the death panel, or is this just the justices that you disagree with?
I do not believe that the comments that you are referring to have relevance for this particular hearing, but here's what I will say. this is an administration that is threatening judges in addition to other people that he disagrees with. So, yes,
Okay,
if your question is, do I defend judges?
I'm ready to
Am
move
I
on.
worried
Thank
about
you.
judges'
Ms.
security?
Hemingway,
I
I'd
am.
like to
I am
come
worried
to
about this
you.
administration essentially threatening those judges.
want to talk with you, Ms. Hemingway, about the State Department's use of the Global Engagement Center to censor news outlets like the Daily Wire and the Federalist. I know that this is something that you have had to deal with. And Daily Wire is located in Tennessee. We're proud of them. We are delighted that they chose to move from California over to Tennessee. And it is my understanding that the Global Engagement Center was created to counter messaging from bad actors, including terrorist groups, but the Biden administration weaponized it to silence conservative groups. And what has the censorship, I call it the censorship industrial complex, what do you think they're trying to hide when it targets outlets like the Federalist and the Daily Wire?
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Yes, our reporter, Margot Cleveland, who's our senior legal writer, uncovered through her reporting facets of the censorship industrial complex and learned that the State Department was one of the federal entities that was engaging with non-governmental organizations and other entities in big tech to market, promote, censorship tools and blacklists, which were then used against my publication, The Federalist, and also The Daily Wire. Publications that are a threat to the reigning orthodoxies are targeted by the censorship industrial complex. They want to exist without people pointing out their lies or the fact that there are really important debates. And so we are suing the State Department for that, and it is ongoing, this support of the censorship industrial complex. It is the bureaucracy, really, which perpetuates this even more than a particular administration.
Yes, and I think it's so important to note that robust, respectful, bipartisan debate adds to our freedom, helps to keep us free, and allows that debate in the public square. And when you have an entity that becomes weaponized and shuts down one side of that speech and only allows speech with which it completely agrees, that is when you have that censorship writ large.
Now, for those that don't understand or need a quick reminder of what Harry and Meghan were a part of when they arrived here in 2020 for their mission, which was interfering with our 2020 election and undermining our civil liberties, this is a good summary of what many of us in Megxit had to endure at the hands of Harry and Meghan and their cabal of censorship friends.
Before joining the Senate as Attorney General of Missouri, I led the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit, exposing the vast censorship enterprise that the Biden administration had built. In the years that have followed, we've uncovered an even larger and more formidable censorship industrial complex that spans from our nation and across the Western world. The issue we are here to discuss extends far beyond the borders of the United States. It's a crisis that implicates all of Western civilization, a crisis that threatens to plunge much of what we've once called the free world into darkness. Over the past decade, an alliance of activists, academics, journalists, big tech companies, and federal bureaucrats designed a system to suppress and silence their critics. They did so in unprecedented ways, using new, novel tools and technologies of the 21st century. What they built was, in effect, a second state, a faceless system of power not bound by the limits and liberties of our Constitution. Of course, this alliance was all too happy to wield traditional state power as well. Under the Biden administration, the Department of Justice became a vehicle for lawfare against the left's political enemies.
Now, I just want to pause for a quick second and point out that Harry and Meghan, without a doubt, are tied to the censorship complex. As you can see on this board that Senator Schmidt has up, Color of Change and the Center for Countering Digital Hate, both of those organizations Harry and Meghan were tightly aligned with. In fact, Harry and Meghan did laundry with Color of Change in 2021.
The victims of this assault were countless innocent Americans.
like myself, the Duchess of North Sussex, Sue Me, Sue Smith, Daily Empress. I mean, there are a lot of us that were affected by these two assholes.
From concerned parents at school board meetings, to traditional Catholics, to pro-life activists, to President Trump himself. But to fully understand the scale of the left's war on the First Amendment, we must look beyond the formal limits of government. The faceless adversary in American politics today is the sprawling labyrinth of left-wing NGOs, nonprofits, foundations, and activist groups, a shadow state that operates with collective purpose, even as its power is dispersed across a vast constellation of groups. Mass migration, cultural Marxism, political riots, the criminal violence that consumes our inner cities. Pull back the curtain on each one of these, and you'll find the same names, the same groups, time and time again. These groups are home to a permanent left-wing activist class that believes itself to be beyond the reach of our constitutional checks and balances. It's the same class that dominates almost every major power center in our country today. The NGOs and major foundations, mass media, the education system, the arts and culture industry, big tech, and the administrative state itself. Fundamentally, they see our constitutional order as an obstacle to their political ambitions, so they can operate in the shadows outside of its line of sight. Journalists have taken their talking points on disinformation from censorship industry experts. And those experts protect the legacy media's power by discrediting and blacklisting their competitors. Activist groups, along with their friends in the press, enforce this system by launching pressure campaigns against anyone who steps out of line. The revolving door never stops turning. The Biden administration was chock full of alumni of these groups. Some had previously worked in the Obama administration. To take one of the many examples, Gene Kimmelman, a man who was described as Obama's, quote, secret weapon on antitrust at the DOJ, left the Obama administration to open up the DC Office of Global Partners and Associates, a so-called human rights group dedicated to combating misinformation and hate speech online. From there, he went on to take over as president and CEO of Public Knowledge, yet another online censorship group that played a key role in suppressing speech during COVID. Once Biden came into power, Kimmelman was appointed to his transition team at the DOJ, where he subsequently took a job as a senior advisor. It's all in the open now, and you can see how it works. So it should come as no surprise that Jen Psaki boasted about flagging disinformation for Facebook, or that the Biden White House was revealed to have been back-channeling with YouTube about suppressing disfavored speech. Nor should it surprise us that the Biden administration coordinated directly with NGOs and nonprofits to wage a whole-of-society censorship campaign. The administrative state and the NGOs are partners in crime with the big tech companies themselves. Big tech elites may be seeking to rewrite history now, especially that our side, the Republicans, are in power, but for the past decade, they have been eager participants in advancing the left's agenda. Facebook was transformed, and it works side by side with NGOs to censor conservatives. Google had used its enormous power to systematically censor, deboost, and throttle conservative ideas and speech, integrating the NGO censorship agenda into every facet of their algorithm. I know this because I've been fighting these people and these organizations my entire career. The Missouri versus Biden case forced the Biden administration to release 20,000 pages of evidence, emails, Slack messages, meeting notes, and other internal communications between the White House, the tech companies, and the NGOs. These documents revealed a vast censorship enterprise, far larger in scope and scale than we could have previously imagined. A coordinated, well-oiled machine with the NGOs at the very center. This machine is waging war on our free speech across multiple fronts. The first is blacklists, groups like NewsGuard and Global Disinformation Index, both of which refused our invitation to testify here today. We did ask. feed blacklists of disfavored media outlets to major advertising firms, depriving these outlets of access to critical ad dollars. What this does, in effect, is to box out conservative or dissident outlets from access to the public square. The top 10 outlets on GDI's blacklist were all on the political right. Another front involves the manipulation of the public narrative. The nonprofits work with the press to justify mass censorship, manufacture hysteria about right-wing disinformation, and smear and defame their critics. Groups like the Atlantic Council actively train journalists in their talking points about disinformation, which, surprise, surprise, almost always means conservative speech. This provides the public pretext for those same groups to push for more censorship. We've seen that in practice in a series of aggressive pressure campaigns waged against platforms that are too friendly to free speech. In 2020, the, quote, Stop Hate for Profit campaign, led by a coalition of powerful censorship groups allied with journalists and advertisers to push for far more aggressive censorship on Facebook, and Facebook swiftly complied. They tried to run the same play against Elon Musk during his acquisition of Twitter, but Elon Musk was the only leader of a major social media platform who was willing to take a stand and defend free speech. Finally, many of these organizations are directly involved with real-time censorship. Groups like the Stanford Internet Observatory and the University of Washington's Center for an Informed Public monitor social media platforms and flag disfavored narratives for the tech platforms themselves. These platforms proceed to use that information to throttle, censor, or ban disfavored ideas. This is not just an attack on free speech, but an attack on the principle of self-government itself. All of it, is funded in no small part by taxpayer dollars. Under the Biden administration, seemingly every agency became a conduit for funneling taxpayer dollars to censorship groups. To describe these groups as private makes a mockery of the term. The NGOs are inextricably tied to the federal government. They are another arm of permanent Washington, advancing its ideological goals in places where the government cannot. Where the state's power is limited, either by political pressure or the Constitution itself, these groups step in to man the gap. Let me close with this. We are a nation conceived in liberty, but over the past decade, a great darkness has arisen in America, a darkness that threatens to transform our country forever. We have watched this darkness pour out in crashing waves, throwing open our borders to the world, dispossessing our people, and unleashing a lawlessness that has swallowed our towns and cities whole. But the agents of this darkness cannot win without aggressive censorship and suppression, dismantling the tradition of free speech and thought that has been core to the way that we live our lives even before our founding. In the digital age, with all the peril and possibility that accompanies with it, the struggle for free speech is the struggle for civilization itself. Once again, we must commit that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the face of this new tyranny. Dr. Franks, I did want to ask, you yourself in your writings, I want to ask you about it to respond, don't seem to be a very big fan of the First Amendment. You've written, and I quote, "The conception of free speech enshrined in the First Amendment reflects white, wealthy men's experiences and interests. You've described free speech advocacy as a, quote, neo-Confederate agenda. And in 2021, you published an op-ed calling for completely writing the First Amendment." Are those your comments?
Those are not entirely accurate, no. The Boston Globe piece was a thought experiment that I was invited to contribute to, and so I was asked if we were rethinking the Constitution, what are some of the ways we could rethink it? So that is the context of that op-ed.
Okay, I think it's interesting that of all the people that could have been selected to come testify about the dangers of limiting free speech and censorship, my colleagues on the other side chose someone who believes that the First Amendment is essentially a white male fetish. Thankfully, that is not in the mainstream, and that we believe that the ability to speak your mind, to express yourself, is protected by the First Amendment, is a God-given right. The government doesn't confer that upon anyone. It's our job to protect it. And I think the dangers that we've seen from the government outsourcing what it can't do itself have been laid out bare. And it's a very dangerous road to go down. And the reason why we're having this hearing is that you have every right to express a point of view that I find abhorrent. I would hope that you would defend my right to do it, to have an opinion that you disagree with. But in the previous administration, if you dared to say that masks were somehow ineffective or that you couldn't, the COVID vaccine didn't actually prevent transmission, all those things were true, but you were deplatformed. You were told you cannot speak. You cannot engage in dissent. That is a very un-American thing. And so that's why we're gathered here today.
Yep, one of my all-time favorite hearings, and you can see why. If you want to see the full hearing, I highly recommend it. I'll go ahead and link it below. Definitely check it out because it is worth watching. It doesn't just apply to Americans. They do talk about what Europe is doing to cancel speech on Americans. So, yeah, that's the person that Harry and Meghan gave $100,000 to and chose not to include her photo and chose not to give her background. Now, why do you think they didn't share any of that information? I think we all know why, but I'd love to know what you guys think. Definitely let me know your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Such a fraud.